Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Avodah Zarah, and we are holding a daf Yud bit, Amud bit on top of the Amud, 3 lines down by Tan Rabbanan. Today's Amud is being learned, L'schut Refuah Shelema of our dear friend Yaakov ben Yaakov ben Rachel, I believe it is, and also the Amud is being learned for Aliyat Shemav Sipora Bat Yitzchak, or Zechut of Yoshua ben Diana, and Menashe ben Asi. We are continuing on the halachot of Avodah Zarah, but first we are continuing on one thing that we did yesterday as of drinking water in an unsafe way. So the Gemara spoke about drinking water from a fountain of Avodah Zarah, or a Noi Avodah Zarah, which is considered a statue built in front of the Avodah Zarah for the beautifying of the Chatzer, of the courtyard of Avodah Zarah. And the Gemara spoke about the details of when is mutar, how it's mutar, and how it's not. And then the Gemara also threw in that you cannot be drinking from a silon, drinking unmonitored, unchecked water straight to your mouth, because you may end up getting yourself into trouble health-wise, and that's because of sakarat aluka, swallowing all kinds of blood-sucking and dangerous creatures like a leech, and therefore it will be asur. So now the Gemara repeats another braita in that effect. Tan Rabbanan, lo yishte adam mayim, lo min haneharot, velo min ha'agamim, lo bepiv, velo beyado. You should not drink directly from a river or from a pond, from an agam, a brecha, not with your mouth directly into the water, and also not directly even with one hand, because one hand is only keeping the water for you to drink immediately. You have no time to check the water because it's going to fall out of your hand through the cracks. If you do it with 2 hands, then you have a bigger amount, larger amount of water in your hand, and it's secured better, so you have some small time at least to check what it is that you're drinking. Make sure it's not dangerous with containing creatures that could be a liability to digest. So says the Gemara, or ingest. Says the Gemara, what is the reason for this? My sakanat aluka. What is the danger? The danger is sakarat aluka, which is ingesting a leech. Yes.
Zoom people are sending. Should be on.
Take a look. So says the Gemara, another line in this effect is Mesaya le Rav Chanina, de Amar Rav Chanina habolea nima shel mayim. If a person swallows, ingests a nima shel mayim, a hair of water, which is another name for aluka, for leech, because when they swim in the water, the ones that are water-based, okay, there are 4 different types of leeches that we know. You'll be surprised to know that there are 680 different species of leech. There are more dangerous ones, safer ones, longer ones, shorter ones, water ones, and not, and so on. But the ones who swim, they actually become very thin and long in order to be able to swim properly in the water. So says the Gemara, that's why it's called nima shel mayim, because the thin becomes a thin thing like a hair. And says the Gemara, mutar lachem lo chamim b'Shabbat. It's so dangerous that it's considered already certainly a chashash sakana, a safek sakanat nefesh, and therefore you could boil water on Shabbat in order to give hot water to this person to get rid of the leech. And it was actually something that happened once on Shabbat, shebala nima shel mayim, that on Shabbat this person ingested a nima shel mayim, a leech, vehitir Rabbi Nechemia leachem lo chabim b'Shabbat, and Rabbi Nechemia allowed people to boil water on Shabbat in order to try to cure him. Adehachi v'hachi, And meanwhile, until you bring the wood and create the fire and boil the water, it takes time. it could be already dangerous, for the leech to attach itself and to start doing its effect. So you want to immediately at least pause the effect of the leech. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna breh Rav Yehoshua lik machala. You should swallow some very strong vinegar, and that's even nowadays known. You either pour salt on them if you have them outside, or you pour vinegar or even lemon juice on them, and that could either kill them or at least pause them from their effect. And says the Gemara, that's what you do until you have the hot water. Amar Rav Huna breh Rav Yehoshua lik machala. Amar Rav Idi bar Ravin Hayman de bala zibura michya lochai. That's about leech. But if you have a sirah, if you swallow a hornet, a dangerous type of bee, then the person is probably not going to live. Now, nowadays it's not necessarily going to be the case, depending on what type of bee you're talking about, unless you have swallowing, a type and getting a bite in the air pipe or close to that, and it becoming swollen enough that it will block the air pipe and so on, or a person that's very sensitive and have allergic reaction to it, then it could actually be fatal in many cases. But nevertheless, the Gemara says it's going to be fatal. And what do you do? Meanwhile, give him a revi'it, 3 ounces or more of a very strong vinegar. At least this will elongate his life for enough time for him to be able to see his family and to ride his living well or dying well in this case, and so on. The mifkat abete, and again, in the time of the Gemara at least, this was something that was considered fatal. Says the Gemara, Tan Rabbanan, Lo yishteh adam mayim belayla. A person should not drink water at night when you don't have natural light to check what you're drinking. Ve'im shata damo berosho. And this is not just because of the aluka or creatures that could be there. It could be even water in the cup. You can't drink, period, at night. Why can't you drink? Because aside from the problem of creatures in the water, there's another problem of night drinking with demons, right? Again, we spoke about this at length before. The Rambam perhaps did not believe in demons the way it's classically accepted to be believed in. Rambam felt it was all references to different things and so on, and others very vehemently disagreed with him, the Vilna Gaon, and the rest of the even Rishonim. The Rivash writes very strong words about Rambam's philosophical beliefs, and he calls him out on it, and having deviated from the Mesorav, Klal Yisrael, and Gemara because of the philosophers that he studied, and so on and so forth. So this was something very heated already in the time of the Rishonim, even before we got to the Mekubalim and the Vilna Gaon, who very, very strongly in Siman Kvayin Zayin in Shulchan Aruch writes opposing the Rambam's Shita, but nevertheless, the Gemara here talks about this in a very open way. It's interesting that Rambam in his Tshuvot writes about these things, and he says, let me explain to you a few of the Ma'amarei Chazal, how it's Mashalum Lisa. It's not the reference to actual magic and actual powers supernaturally in a negative way, and so on. And he gives a few simple examples that he could easily explain, but then he says, from this you could see the rest of them, and you go figure it out. When I was reading it, I was like, oh, I wish he spoke about this Gemara, and the other one, and the other one, and the other one, the ones that are very hard to actually get around and get out of. And this Gemara seems to be also a very open one. The Gemara says there is going to be a problem with shedim, with demons, and the Gemara even explains how to deal with this. It says, oh, you're thirsty. What do you do when you're thirsty? You need to drink at night. Sometimes you get up and you're dehydrated, you're thirsty, you need to drink. So what do you do then? Says the Gemara, if you do drink, damo berosho, you are liable for your own life. Why? Because of the sakana. What is the sakana? Says the Gemara, sakarat shabriri. Shabriri is a shindalit of water at night. Veisachi, if you're thirsty, what do you do? Says the Gemara, we already learned earlier on in Masechet Brachot that the Shedim don't have power, even though that they have more power at night and outside the city and so on. They don't have as much power when you're two people, right? When you have two people, they don't have that much power. And you see from this Gemara, at least the second one also has to be awake. So if you have somebody else with you in the room, you wake them up. Sometimes waking up the other person is more dangerous than drinking the water. But the Gemara says you wake the other person up, and you tell them, "I'm thirsty. I want to drink." Velemale sachina. Sachina, I'm thirsty for water. Ve'ilo. And if you don't have another person with you, then what you do is nekarkesh benichtema achasba. You bang on top of the lid of the water jar, so to speak. Venema, and you say, he himself to himself out loud, he says, Pelania bar Planita. He says his name and his mother's name, right? Whenever you have in Yaneh Sakana, the Maran Chida writes that you say, based on Zarah Kadosh really, says you say the mother's name because you want to make sure that it is 100%, right? The mother, there's nothing to deny that the mother is the mother, right? The father, the Gemara says, Lo Rov Bilo Dacharabal, so it's Al Pi Rov, and so on and so forth. So we say, for Flash Imam, we always say the name of the mother. So it said, Plania bar Planita, Amra dechaimech. Your mother told you, Izdar bishavriri, be careful from this shindalit of water, shabriri, and then you demise its name on a descending order of taking one letter every time you mention it. You're diminishing its name, and that has an effect with the Shedim. Again, the Gemara in Masechet Chulin Daf Kuvhei is a long Gemara with Abaye there that discusses that many of these things regarding Kochot Tum'ah and Shedim and so on don't work in logical ways. They have their own rhyme and reason. They have their own laws and regulations. So one of the things is, if you mention their name in a diminishing way, they leave. They are diminished in their presence as well. So you say it like this: Izdar mishavriri, briri, riri, yiri, ri. You take one letter off every time, and that is going to be the remedy to be able to drink even if you don't have anyone else with you. Bekasi chivri, which means in new earthenware cups or vessels. So that's how you get around it. Fine, beautiful.
Does it still apply today?
So that's a very good question. Is it still apply today? There is a Haggadah Mordechai that writes that nowadays we don't concern ourselves too much with this in these generations, because they already made a gezerah on them not to be living and dwelling in residential areas, and therefore the powers have been diminished in a serious way, to the degree that's almost not relevant. And they have many different halachot in Siman Kuf Tet Zayin of Orach Chaim, the halachot of Sakaram, that you see nowadays we're not careful with. You leave a water uncovered, you leave at night, you leave wine uncovered, and so on and so forth, things that you leave under the bed, and so on. The Kochot HaTumah, especially talking about Shedim, that is something that has been kind of like chased out of civilization and residential areas of the world, and therefore nowadays we don't necessarily, and this is already from the late Rishonim that they write this, and certainly nowadays it has been becoming less and less. Again, you find many Achronim still, lechatchila at least, concerned about these things, but certainly is not the same as it was in the previous generations. So, says the Mishnah, now let's give a little preface to this. As we're starting a new Mishnah now, Yud Bet Amud Bet on the bottom of the Amud. The Kumarim, the priests of Avodah Zarah, they were wealthy, right? They were wealthy, and they had real estate as stores that they would rent, basically. And those stores in the holidays, they would actually be designed differently, and that would be a sign that they're paying tax to the temple, to the Avodah Zarah, to the Kumarim, right? They would pay all their taxes to the Avodah Zarah. Now, you could probably opt to be one of those paying taxpayers to Avodah Zarah if you're a very frum over the Avodah Zarah. But in the marketplace, in the day of the Eid, it would be a clear difference between the stores who were designed, which indicated stores that pay tax to the Avodah Zarah. So this way, people who want to support the Avodah Zarah, they would shop from those stores, and then there were other ones, right? So says the Mishnah, if you have a city that is celebrating an Eid. Now, we spoke before that when you have a city that's celebrating Avodah Zarah, you can't enter the city. Right? And certainly you can't do business with them. So how can you have such a thing? So simply put, it could be speaking about a city that has Avodah Zarah marketplace is right outside of it, but they still pay tax, those designed stores that indicate them being owned by the Kumarim Avodah Zarah. You know for sure that this, it says basically on top of it with the design, is another way of silently saying this store pays dues to the temple, to the Avodah Zarah. So hence, you know that your money partially is going to be supporting Avodah Zarah. Is it mutar to be mahaneh Avodah Zarah? Now, we spoke about being neheneh from Avodah Zarah before, right? Having benefit from Avodah Zarah is asur. How about supporting Avodah Zarah? I'm not doing anything. I'm just shopping in a marketplace. I just happen to know that partially this goes to the Avodah Zarah that's going to be there, right? Actually, when we were in our previous community, we had a serious parking issue, and across from our Bet Knesset was the largest church in Los Angeles, right? With massive acres of parking area, and there was brought up a discussion of maybe we should rent from them the ability to park, right? This way you just go park there and come across the street to the shul for davening, especially for events and so on and so forth. So obviously you have to deal with two different questions. One question is it mutar to go through a chaser of Avodah Zarah? Can you go through a courtyard of Avodah Zarah? Is the prohibition of entering a church, entering a Bet Avodah Zarah, limited to the sanctuary of Avodah Zarah, or is it extended to the chaser of Avodah Zarah? That's A. B, when you pay money, let's say you pay $1,000 now to the church for this, it's supporting, of course, the Avodah Zarah. Is that something that would be mutar, even though that you're benefiting, of course, directly from that? So that really would be this Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, you have chanuyot meutarot, those designed ones, taxpayers to the Avodah Zarah, and the ones who are not meutarot. Zaya Maseh Bebeit Shan. This was a story that happened, actually, a question that was asked from Beit Shan, V'amru Chachamim, ha-meutarot asurot, v'shena meutarot mutarot. That the ones who are tax paying to the Avodah Zarah is asur to do business with them in the day of the Chag of the Goyim. The other ones are mutar. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rish Lakish says, Lo shanu ela mutarot beveret v'adas. We're only talking about the ones that are designed with flowers and hadassim, the besamim, deka, mithani merecha. Because you are benefiting from the designs of Avodah Zarah. These would be like circled, beautifully designed, the flower necklaces and so on that you would put on, and they were put for beauty and for good smell in front of the Avodah Zarah, right? And you would take them and put them on. That would be, or you would go inside. We'll see this process in just a moment, a few lines. Or you would just go into the thing to shop, and the smell would be there, and you would have hana'ah from the smell. That, says the Rish Lakish, is the problem, because you are benefiting from the Avodah Zarah. Rish Lakish holds that you benefiting the Avodah Zarah by paying money, which a part of it is going to be taken and given to the Avodah Zarah, that's not a problem. We'll deal with that in just a moment, right? But says the Rish Lakish, the problem is you benefiting from the Avodah Zarah, not you benefiting the Avodah Zarah, right? So says the Gemara, my tama, the Amar Kra lo yitbak biyadcha meuma min hacherem. Because the pasuk says you cannot draw any benefit from the herem, the objects of Avodah Zarah, or anything that belongs to it. And therefore, you can't benefit even from the smell of Avodah Zarah. Says the Gemara, Nehenehu dasur, aval mahane shari. Nehene is asur, but mahane, if you are benefiting the Avodah Zarah indirectly, that's mutar, says Resh Lakish. Now, Resh Lakish, elsewhere, you see he is consistent with Rabbi Yochanan that benefiting the Avodah Zarah will be asur. Only here, and this is a Tosafot over here that discusses this, only here Resh Lakish holds is mutar because you would be disgracing the Avodah Zarah at the same time as well. As we will see in the Gemara, they would make a Tanai, and they would say, well, today it's a holiday. If you put this beautiful crown made out of besamim on your head and on your rides, on your donkey's head, then we don't charge you taxes. L'chvot ha'avodah zarah, we don't charge tax-free. You could buy tax-free. L'chvot ha'chag, right? But if you don't do that, if you don't respect the avodah zarah, we charge you taxes, right? And the taxes go to the avodah zarah. The Gemara is going to say it's like a catch-22. You can't do anything. But at the same time, even if it's asur, if you did chop and you were not willing to respect the avodah zarah, because you refrained from putting that crown on your head, lichvod avodah zarah, you're disgracing the avodah zarah. You say, I hate the avodah zarah so much, I'm willing to pay more money from my pocket and not to put the crown on my head. That's the only time that Resh Lakish is willing to be mekel, that mahane, that benefiting avodah zarah would be mutar, because you're benefiting it with disgrace. You're benefiting it with disrespect. And therefore, but other places, to be mahane, to benefit the avodah zarah, when it's not disrespectful, then even Resh Lakish would be modeh, that is mutar. Okay? Now that's Nachloket Resh Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. This so far was Resh Lakish. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, first top line, Afilu meutarot beperot nami asur. Even those stores that don't have besamim designing and decorating the store in the day of the holiday of the goyim, they're just decorated with fruits. There's no good smell there, but they're decorated, which means what? That they are taxpayers to the avodah zarah. Remember, those ones who are owned by the priests of avodah zarah, they would decorate their store, indicating that they are paying taxes to the avodah zarah. So says Rabbi Yochanan, any taxpayer to avodah zarah on the day of their chag would be asur. Amar afilu meutarot beperot nami asur. Why? Kal vachomer. It's kal vachomer. Nehene asur. To benefit from the avodah zarah, where you are diminishing the avodah zarah, you're taking something from the avodah zarah, right? That is asur. Mahane, when you establish the avodah zarah, you pay for its kiyum, for its making it more dignified and more established. That's mutar. Of course, that's asur. It's a kal vachomer, says Rabbi Yochanan. So says the Gemara, Metive. They asked the question, the Bet Midrash, on the shita of Resh Lakish. Right? So we're going to attack, so to speak, the Shita of Resh Lakish. How in the world do you say that benefiting the Avodah Zarah, paying money indirectly to the Avodah Zarah, will be mutar? We see from a Braita directly, not like Resh Lakish. You see from the Braita directly that it's asur to benefit the Avodah Zarah. How so? Says the Gemara. Rabbi Natan Omer, this is already in the Tanaim, Rabbi Natan says, Yom she'avodat kochavim manachat bo. Manachat is with a dagesh over here, right? Manachat, when you say bracha lahaniach tefillin, you have to be very careful, because lahaniach could mean to put tefillin, which is what you want to say. But if you say with the dagesh, that would mean you're leaving, you're putting away, you're leaving it, right? Like over here. Manachat lo means they are dropping the taxes, right? They're leaving it out. It's exact opposite meaning. So it's like sometimes a little grammatical dikduk is very important because you could actually change completely. You want to say it with excitement, and you're madgish something that has to be rafeh, and you mess up the whole meaning, and it becomes exactly the opposite. So you have to be a little bit well versed in proper diktuk. So over here, Yom Shavodat Kachamim manachat bo et hamaches. When they drop the taxes, because the day of the Avodah Zarah's holiday, so to speak, machrizin v'omrim, the goyim would make a keruz. They would go announcing publicly, Kol mi shenotel atara v'yaniach berosho berosh chamoro. If you take this crown and put it on your head, and we'll make these crowns made out of besamim, and you put that crown on your head and on the head of your donkey, lichvod avodah zarah, to respect and glorify the avodah zarah, yanichu lo et hameches, they would drop the taxes for them. Ve'im lav, and if you don't do it, then we will charge you meches, we will charge you taxes, right? Yehudi shenimtza sham, if you're a Jew that you find yourself in this situation, what do you do, right? It's a catch-22, you have no way out. Yaniach, if you put the crown on your head, va'veila, right? You're respecting the Avodah Zarah, Hashem Yirachem, right? Then you're ne'eneh, you're benefiting from the smell of this Avodah Zarah, you beautify yourself with the tachshitei Avodah Zarah, that's oy va'avoy, right? And lo yaniach, if you don't, nimtza ma'aneh, then you are benefiting the Avodah Zarah by the 10% extra that you're paying, right? So says the Gemara, nimtza ma'aneh. And from here already you see the problem with Resh Lakish, because what did Resh Lakish say, Rabotai? Resh Lakish said there is no problem of mahaneh et avodah zarah, right? That you could pay the extra taxes, right? So this is direct stira to Resh Lakish. There's no way out, right? This is a direct stira to Resh Lakish. So now, before we deal with the stira, with the kasha, the bomb kasha on Resh Lakish, let's finish the Braita. The Braita says, therefore, Mikan Amru, a person that does business in the shuk, in the marketplace of Avodat Kochavim, on the day of their Chaga, when this situation is going on, that if you don't put, you are benefiting it, and if you put, you're benefiting from it, and it's a catch-22, and you should not be shopping. Chazal made a knas. They made a fine, midrabanan, that if you did buy something, we will not let you use it. You can never use the thing that you bought on that day from the Shuk of Avodah Zarah. It's a takara d'Rabbanan, as a fine, as a knas. How do you do it? Behema te'akir. If you bought a behema, you make it not usable by cutting the back feet, bottom of the foot. Now it cannot be used for any melacha anymore. We spoke about this before. How in the world do we do this when it's Sar Bal Chaim, which the Gemara in Baba Metziat of Lamed Bet, Maskanat Gemara is, Sar Bal Chaim is Doraita. Right? So we have to deal with this. Again, as you may remember, we spoke once long time ago about the tshuva of the Nodab Yehuda in Tinyana. The Rabbi Yechezkel Landa, in his famous Nodab Yehuda, he writes that he was asked if the rich people could go hunting. One of the hobbies of the elite of the society back in the time was they had acres of land, of forest and so on, and they would go to hunt. They had hunting dogs, and they had they would go hunting.
Now people still do that.
Well, still do that. Yes, they still do that. There's a hunting season and so on and so forth. But now there's not necessarily the elite of the community. Back then it was a little bit different.
Right.
But they asked him, mutar or is not mutar? You're killing animals for fun. Right? You're not eating them because it's treif, right? Either because it's treif animal or because you make it nevela by killing it with an arrow, or nowadays with a bullet. So is it mutar or is it asur? And he goes through different questions. He goes through the question of bal tashchit, wasting resources, which is isur d'oraita in its core. It goes through the isur of bal shaksu. The Bal Tashchit, and then the Isura of Sar Bar Chaim, which is also in Kor Deoraita, and then he deals with the Isura of Bitul Torah and doing goyish things, right? So he says it is not a Isura of Bal Tashchit because you're doing it for your benefit. It's not even Isura of Sar Ba'al Hayim, because A is because of your benefit. B, he holds something very mechudash. He holds that when you kill, there is no Sar Ba'al Hayim. Sar Ba'al Hayim is when you bother inflict pain on the animal, keeping them alive. But if in process of killing them, you inflict pain on them, that's not Sar Ba'al Hayim. Now this Noda B'Yehuda is very mechudash, because Sefer HaChinuch, one of the Gedolei HaRishonim, in explaining the time of the mitzvah of shechita, he explains that the reason that you have to have a very sharp knife and very smooth blade, right, chad v'chalak, which is a whole umanut, is a very, very hard thing to learn, how to sharpen and smoothen the chalaf, the knife of shechita. The reason for that, the Oraita says the Sefer HaChinuch, is to diminish Sar Ba'al Hayim. So you see, he explains the reason the Oraita and Mari Ayash, Rabbi Yehuda Ayash, in his Perush of Afra Dara and Ara Dara Baran, he actually says that you see from this Sefer Chinuch, not like the Noda B'Yehuda. But be that as it may, it's the Noda B'Yehuda in Tinyana, in Yeredah Siman Yud, of his Tshuvot. It's tucked away over there, and he says at the end, don't do it because it's a goyish thing and it's bitul Torah. What do you do with your time? You go to Amud Yomi, why are you going to hunting? So that's the reason he says at the end, you should not be doing it. But nevertheless, your mahaneh, if you don't do it, nimsa mahaneh, and therefore you cut the back feet of the animal in order not to make it not usable anymore, and that's when you bought an animal. But perot kesut vekelim, if you bought different fruits, vegetables, food, and garments, yirakvu, you put them away in the attic until they rot away. Vekelim atechot, things that don't go bad, like metal, utensils and so on and so forth, you throw them in Yam HaMelech, somewhere that they will decay, and also you know that no man is going to lay hand on them ever again. Ulmata explains that you cannot just cut off a piece of the animal, because if you're not careful, you could make it terefa. We spoke already before that there is an isur, the oraita, to make an animal terefa, even if you're not eating them, even if you're not planning to eat them, is isur to make them terefa. So therefore, you have to be very careful where you cut from the arkuba ulmata, which we're not going to get into the details of what that exactly is in the three parts of the leg of the animal, which is the back legs. So says the Gemara, katani miyad, but you see from here, Yaniach nimtza nene, lo yaniach nimtza mahane. You see, not like Resh Lakish over here, who said there's no isur of mahane, of benefiting the Avodah Zarah, right? So says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Shashia, Bereit Rav Idi, Kasav Resh Lakish, Pelig Rabbanan Alei Rabbi Natan. You're right. Rabbi Natan, you cannot reconcile with Resh Lakish. It's diametrically opposed. It says exactly what Resh Lakish says, and it says asur, whereas Resh Lakish says mutar. So that you cannot reconcile. But Resh Lakish holds that Rabbi Natan is a dat yachid. Rabbanan, Chachamim disagree with him, and they hold there's no Yisura Mahaneh in this specific case when you're disgracing the Avodah Zarah by paying taxes and not being willing to put the crown on your head. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan Savar, Rabbi Yochanan holds, Lo Pligi, the Chachamim do not disagree, in which, Bezat Hashem, tomorrow we will see exactly the shita of Rabbi Yochanan and Chachamim. The Gemara is going to examine that, whether or not Chachamim actually disagree with Rabbi Natan or not, which is a fascinating Gemara, which we'll Bezat Hashem been doing in the days to come. Hazaku Baruch.